Hello everybody, thank you for joining us for another story time today. It is January 27th and it's only 8 degrees outside, so it's a little cold out here for story time today. But winter is my most favorite season, as you've heard me say before. We finally have snow on the ground, which has been really exciting. I hope you're getting outside to play in the snow and make a snowman, or maybe you're going to try something new or an activity you've done before like snowshoeing or cross-country skiing. But the snow brings on this whole magical world around us that I just love. So next time we'll read a book about some things that are going on underneath the snow that might be a little harder to see. But today we're going to be talking about things that are going on top of the snow. So my favorite thing about winter is in the summer when I walk through my woods, I don't know what other animals have also been walking through my woods. They don't really leave tracks behind when the grass is grown in or there's leaves on the ground. It's hard to tell unless we have like a mud pit what animals have been there. In the winter, when they walk across the snow, often the snow makes a perfect little impression of their foot or an animal track, and that lets us know who's been around. So today we're going to read a book called Whitetailed Tracks, and this is not quite a story, but as you'll find out in the introduction, it's about how the tracks can tell us a story. So we'll learn about different animal tracks, we'll see what they look like, and we'll learn how to read those stories of the animals. Then we'll take a little walk around my yard and see what we can find for animal tracks. So it's called Whitetailed Tracks. It was written and illustrated by Jim Arnosky. Again, this book has really awesome illustrations, so I'll make sure to show them up close so you can find tracks in your yard. And I want to just read part of this introduction here. It says, when you learn to recognize and read animal tracks, you are learning an ancient language. That's pretty cool. Of shapes and patterns. The shapes of the footprints reveal the identity of the track maker. The pattern of the tracks tells a story about what the animal was doing. I've been studying animal tracks ever since I was a boy and became curious about wildlife living around my home. Maybe you're curious about the wildlife living around your home. My wildlife journals are filled with sketches of tracks and track patterns and show various animals walking, running, or leaping. In this book, I will show you the animals making the tracks in their natural habitats and dozens of wild animal footprints, many of which I've painted life-size. That's my favorite part of this book. So start making tracks of your own outdoors. Look around, see what animals live near you, and learn to read the stories and the stories their tracks tell. All right, so we're going to get started. It's actually right here. This is going to be our first track. Anybody know? White-tailed deer. Deer tracks. The heart-shaped hoofprints of deer are the most recognizable of all animal tracks. Male deer tend to drag their toes, so you can see these little drag marks as they walk. The bigger the buck, the deeper the drag marks. When deer run, their sharp hooves cut deeply into the ground, and their small back toes, called dew claws, can often be seen in their tracks. So this would be deer walking, and this is what the tracks look like when they're running. Deer running or walking on slippery mud or ice spread their hoofs wide for stability, making their hoofprints look like a set of horns. In autumn, the deer's breeding season, look for fresh marks on small trees where bark has been worn away. These are called buck rubs, and they're made by the antlers of a male while they are practicing to fight with other males. The white-tailed deer shown on the left is typical of the North American deer family, which also includes elk, caribou, and moose. Some other deer signs we were talking about at our last nature walk that you might want to look for. In the fall, you might also find scrapes on the ground where it's all the leaves and stuff have kind of been dug away and there's kind of a big open area on the ground. And in the winter, you can also look for deer beds where the deers have bedded down at night and they make kind of an oval impression in the snow. You can also look for deer scat, and there's a lot of that around. So let's open this up. Life-size tracks of the deer family. So this is a life-size track. It's like the same size of my face. What do you think made that? what member of the deer family is a big, big, big one? It's moose. Okay, so we have a moose, caribou, elk. This is the tracks of the running deer they talked about. You can see those dew claws. This is a Florida key deer, it says, so those must be smaller. A mule deer and a white-tailed deer. We won't see very many of these tracks in the Driftless, but if you're up north near our Pine River branch, I know some of you have seen these before. Bear tracks. Bears walk flat-footed, placing the entire foot on the ground with each step. The wide front feet and the large hind feet show completely in bear tracks. You can see the front foot and the back foot. Because a bear is a heavy animal, its tracks are often pressed deeply, creating perfectly defined footprints. With a perfect set of 4 bear footprints, 2 front and 2 hind, an experienced animal tracker is able to accurately estimate the size and weight of a bear that made it. On slippery surfaces, a bear's toes spread apart for better traction, pressing in footprints that are much larger than the bear's feet. Such splayed footprints can fool a tracker into imagining the bear that left them is much larger than the actual size. And that can be true of a lot of animals depending on how they leave their tracks. If they're pressing really hard or if they're moving fast, or even on warmer days where our snow starts to melt, it can kind of make our tracks expand. And that can be tricky and make them look bigger than they actually are. All right, and we see too, sometimes you might even find some bear tracks on a tree, right? If they've climbed up a tree. Ooh, let's see their real life sizes. So this track is in the snow, and this is our polar bear track. Again, his foot is about the size of my face. That's a really big track. Then we have the black bear, which in Minnesota, this is going to be the only bear track that we'll find because we only have black bears in Minnesota and Wisconsin. And then we have the grizzly bear and the brown bear. This is what we're going to find in my yard probably. Small animal tracks. The most common animal tracks you'll find will be those of small animals. Unlike larger animals who often fill up with each meal, small animals such as raccoons, skunks, rabbits, squirrels, and mice rely on many small meals to keep them going. They must feed daily, sometimes hourly, depending on the availability of food and the absence of danger. Small animal tracks vary as greatly as the animals that make them. Some tracks, such as those of skunks and rabbits, can be recognized by the track pattern alone. All other small animal tracks are identified by the shape. Note that the forefeet are usually much smaller than the hind feet. The snowshoe hare, shown on the opposite page, lives in northern forests. It's named for its unusually large hind feet. So the snowshoe hare is called that because its back feet are big like snowshoes. And just like snowshoes, that helps the snowshoe hare walk on top of the snow and not sink in so far. So it's easier for the snowshoe hare to find food in the winter when there's a lot of snow. We see lots of little tracks on this page. We've been seeing a lot of these raccoon tracks and possum tracks around us. Possum tracks, if you will. Let's see. Sometimes, especially in earlier in the winter, like in November and December, when we still have a lot of open water around the edges, I can find these beaver tracks in the snow. Or these are my favorite winter tracks to find, otter tracks, because otters are my favorite animal. We have muskrat, armadillo tracks. We won't see these where we live. And porcupine tracks. If you're in our northern, again, you're up near Pine River, you might find some of these. And then we have rabbit tracks and mouse patterns. Oh, here we go. Oh, skunk. Okay. All right, let's take a look at some of these. Badger track. I have never seen one of those. That would be fun. We have our river otter, and you can see their webbed toes really well in that track. The other thing to look for in our otter tracks, you might find some footprints, and then you're going to find long slides in between their footprints where they sometimes slide on their bellies. We don't have these ones. A bigger porcupine track you can see. Beaver tracks can be pretty big on their back feet, and you can see their webbed toes really well too. And you can see there's a big difference in the shape between our beaver tracks and our otter tracks. So both have webbed toes, but our otters are more round, whereas our beavers have feet that look a little bit more like our feet. Same with our snowshoe hares, except they have 4 toes. Then we have lots of little mice tracks up here. And squirrels. So one thing doesn't really show, I'm going to go back. The most common tracks you're probably going to find in your yard are rabbit and squirrel tracks. And a good way to tell them apart, the easiest way, is to always look where it's going. So sometimes you're following a track that you think might be a bunny track, and then it disappears up a tree. Do you think bunnies climb up trees? No, so that's probably a squirrel track. The other way you can tell is if you look close at the track. Both bunnies and squirrels leave tracks where their front feet, remember their front feet are smaller, so they fall behind their larger back feet. So if you are a bunny, your front feet are often at this diagonal line in your tracks, and squirrels, their front feet often land side by side right behind their back feet. So look for that distinction in your tracks out in your yard, and perhaps we'll find some out here today. The other thing I didn't mention either is a lot of our mouse tracks, I don't try to tell mice apart. All their tracks are just teeny tiny little tracks. So you'll see little footprints like this. And often, depending on the type, you might see a long tail print with their tracks. Or I swear sometimes you can see just like the cutest little butt prints for mice out in the woods. So look for those tail tracks as well. You might find them in our possum tracks too. All right. Feline tracks. Of all the larger predators, wildcats are most likely to use the same trails again and again. In deep snow, their habitual routes become gully trails in which feline tracks going to and coming from their hunting grounds are preserved, down out of the wind, away from the blowing snow. A cat's sharp, retractable claws do not show in its tracks unless the cat has lunged to catch its prey or scratched the ground to cover its droppings. Only cats thoroughly cover their droppings. Bobcat, lion, and jaguar paws all have 3 lobes. So 1, 2, 3. So those look a little different than a member of the canine or the dog family. Bobcat, lion, and jaguar paws all have 3 lobed heels. The lynx, the ocelot, and the jaguarundi, which we don't have single lobed heels. Okay. The wildcats we have in North America are from smallest to largest, the ocelot, jaguarundi, bobcat, lynx, American lion, and jaguar. And this is showing that the cats have retractable claws, so when they walk, their claws typically aren't out unless they're leaping onto prey, so you don't see their claw marks usually in their prints, again, unless they're hunting. Alright, so here we would have the American lion, or we call that a cougar or mountain lion. Probably won't see any of these. They're not very common, and they're very, very sneaky animals. There's probably more of them than we know, but we don't see them very often. The bobcat is one that you might find. I have a bobcat. I know I've seen it on my trail cam behind my woods. The lynx. And then what I see most often is we must have some neighborhood outside cats, because I see a lot of domestic cats or house cat pop-ups. Canine tracks. Canines include dogs, foxes, coyotes, and wolves. All canine footprints show 4 toes and a heel. Toenails make noticeable markings. Large dog, coyote, and wolf tracks can be very similar in shape, size, and length of stride, so they can be really hard to tell apart. However, dog tracks usually wander aimlessly, suggesting little sign of wariness. This distinguishes them from the more furtive tracks and usually very direct routes used by their wild counterparts. The easiest canine tracks to identify are fox tracks. Because a fox's chest is so narrow, its feet step directly in front of each other, creating a nearly straight line of footprints. During the winter, all canines grow hair between their toes. These winter snowshoes, so again, that hair helps them keep up above higher on the snow so they don't sink in as deep. It makes it easier for them to walk and catch their prey. These winter snowshoes blur the toe prints, and you have to look more closely to identify the maker. Okay, so here it's showing us the walking track of a typical dog, and this is a fox. So again, because their chest is so narrow and their feet are so close together, it kind of makes one continuous line of tracks. All right, so again, it can be really hard to tell dog tracks apart from other members, like dogs that we might have as pets, apart from other members of the canine family like wolves, coyotes, or foxes. So a small dog, medium dog, a large dog, a huge dog. I have a foster dog right now that has paws like this. And then we can see a coyote, an Arctic fox, a red fox, and what it might look like in winter in the snow. Again, because there's so much fur in between their toes, it kind of changes what it looks like. And a gray fox, these fox can actually climb trees, and they're super cool, but we don't see them very often either. They're around, but they're sneaky. Okay. We have a red wolf, which we don't really have here, and the timber wolf, which driftless region, I'm sorry, you don't have. Northern region, you might see some wolf tracks. Okay. All right, last but not least, we have reptile and bird tracks. Okay. Reptile tracks often go unnoticed. Our eyes are used to looking for distinctive footprints rather than various scrapes and marks reptiles make. But when a snake slithers across the mud or a turtle drags itself over sand, a series of tracks are left that are very recognizable. So we might just kind of mistake this, right, for a ripple in the sand, but it might be a snake track. Bird tracks rarely travel far. Then their makers take flight. Some tracks show only 2 footprints and then wing marks flapping away. Songbirds hop, shorebirds and large birds such as crows and turkeys walk. All birds create the most delicate and beautiful animal tracks, evoking both earth and sky in every footprint. The next time you go outdoors, look for wild tracks. There may be a whole story at your feet, imprinted on the mud or the snow or scratched into the sand. Okay. I do find a lot of bird tracks, especially I have this flock of juncos that appear to be living under my porch when it gets cold. And when I go out on the porch, they all fly out from under there, but I'll see their little tracks all over my porch. I also find a lot of turkey tracks in our woods, and in the summer, because we're on the Mississippi here, we can often find really big bird tracks from great blue herons and pelicans along the river in the soft, wet sand, which is pretty fun to look for too. You might see these turtle tracks too. You can see the tail and the shell dragging through the middle, and then those turtle claws on the side. So here are some of the bigger bird tracks you might find. We have a goose, a gull, and a duck, a grouse, crow or magpie, sparrow, blue jays. I have a lot of these in my yard right now. Those big turkey tracks, and a small heron or an egret. So look for those bird-like tracks when you go out too. We're going to take a quick walk in my yard and see what we can find here. All right, so we see lots of tracks in here. Sometimes if the snow is pretty fluffy and they don't make a very distinct print, like you can't actually, in this one, you can't actually count the number of toes this animal has. You just have to go by the general shape of the track. So there's a couple hints here. One is this little bit of scat in here is our rabbit scat. And you can see with our rabbit tracks, these are the 2 front feet, and again, they're at that diagonal, and the larger back feet in front of it. Rabbit superhighway. Oh, interesting. here you can see where the rabbits are sneaking under my fence into my yard. Naughty, naughty little rabbits. Here we go. Let's see who's going in here. Here we can see that hoof print from our white-tailed deer. It kind of points this way, so that means the deer was walking this way in its track. There's another one. Another one. And you can see that they make kind of a trail through the woods. The deer use this trail a lot. So it was talking in that book, the felines, they call them gully trails, or they make these paths that get kind of worn down and protected over time. And we'll see deer trails kind of like that too, that they walk the same path over and over and over again. And as we get more snow, there's kind of these nice easy trails then they have to walk on through the woods. So it goes that way, and then you can see if we cross the trail and follow these tracks, you can see the trail go into the woods this way. So here, I don't know if you can see these in the video, we have some teeny tiny mouse tracks on top of the snow. If you can, I don't know, it probably won't show up, but you can see the tails next to their footprints in this video. Let me see if I can find one you can see a little better maybe. So this whole little trail of mice prints happen around. So thank you for coming to Storytime. I hope that you get outside. Please, it's only 8 degrees. I just read Storytime outside. Just bundle up, put your layers on, get out and go out there. It is so much fun to look for tracks in winter, and you don't get this opportunity during other parts of the year where we don't have this really nice snow to find animal tracks in. So get out there. I'll put some resources down below to help you ID your tracks, and we'll see you in 2 weeks for a story time about what's going on under the snow. If you did our winter bingo scavenger hunt, there was something on there about the whole world going on underneath the snow, and we'll learn about it next time. See you later.